Welcome to the Irn-Cru podcast, the American football podcast made in Scotland by NFL lovers. This is the review crew, and I'm your host, Keith McGinty. Another fantastic weekend of football in the NFL. This time it's the postseason, and it was the wild card weekend. We have 6 fantastic matchups to talk you through, and I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by some of the finest crew members and a special guest. First up, how about them cheeseheads? It's Liam McGee. Liam, how are we, buddy?
I'm good. Very good. Never better, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. What a fantastic weekend. You must be a little bit surprised yourself after such an emphatic result.
I'm sure we'll come on to that more, but yes, I am. The heart was ever hopeful, shall we say?
It certainly was. Beyond expectations. We're also joined by Ross Stud Sterling. For once, it was only the temperature that was dropping in KC. Studs, how are we, buddy?
Not bad, mate. Buzzing after the weekend, obviously, and getting into divisional rounds. Still had a couple of drops here for one of our very reliable hands in Travis Kelce, but we'll put that into the weather this week rather than anything else.
We'll get there. We'll get to that as well. We're going to be talking all things from the wildcard games. But as I said, we are also joined by a very special guest. He's a long-suffering founder, host, and blog writer of Roar of the Lions UK, and they're one of the darlings of the crew, of course, the Detroit Lions. And we're delighted to welcome Matt Turner to the show. Matt, very welcome to the Gridiron Crew. How are you? Are you, I imagine, still buzzing after a fantastic result this weekend?
Yeah, still on a high. It feels like even though we were favoured for the Rams game, every single pundit, everyone who thought they knew something about the NFL picked against us. So to actually win and get it over the line for the first time in 32 years and the second time since 1957 feels pretty special.
That's wild. I heard that stat. I was going to bring that up a little bit later on. That's absolutely wild. But we will get into that. Whenever we invite a new guest that's not been on the crew before, we always like to get a little bit about their background. We are a long way removed from the NFL, and it's weird and wonderful ways that people tend to get into it. So how did you get into American football, and what short straw made you want to be a Lions fan?
So, I always liked playing sports with an oval ball. So I played rugby from the age of 3. And I've grown up with that all my life. And when I got to 14, I knew that American football would be something that I would like, but I never really pursued it until I got to university. And I started in 2008, but I didn't watch American football that year, thankfully.
Yeah.
And then the Lions went 0-16 that year, got the number 1 overall pick. I got into it in my second year of university, started playing a bit of Madden. Lions were like the team on Play Now because they picked Stafford number 1 overall. So they were a team I was familiar with playing just in arcade mode at that time. And they played in the colour of the team that I played for at school and that sort of thing. So I was like, okay, that kind of works. Learn a bit more about the team. And, they've got Megatron and all that sort of stuff. Exciting guys play for the team despite being absolutely terrible. And partially it was deliberate too, because I hate Man United. And, in the sort of way of God, you can't, if you have a choice, you can't pick that team that's just going to crush every year, because when you don't win, you're just going to bugger off and do something else because it's boring. So I went hard against that and tried to pick maybe the worst team I could. And it seemed like, I play with Detroit a lot on Madden and they're really bad. So let's try this. And then you learn a bit more about the city, and it's a really kind of romantic place in the world. It's got a lovely culture to it. The people are fantastic there. Everyone who supports any team says that about their city, I know. But having gone there and met people, they're so humble, gritty. I know that Dan Campbell has brought grit as a thing back to Detroit as a Lions fan, but the city's always been that way, and it's very well known for that, much like, Pittsburgh as well, and places like that.
Yeah.
And, it was the richest city in the world in the 60s, but it went bankrupt in 2011. And the kind of highs and lows of the place mean it's rich of stories, and there's something about the place that's just important historically, as well as for now it's on the up and it's on the way back. It was a top 5 place in the world to go and visit by I can't remember the name of the travel magazine, but really famous. Not Forbidden Planet, not
Forbidden Planet. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking. Yeah,
yeah. So it was number 4 in the places to go in the world 2 years ago, because there's something special going on there, and it's quite refreshing as a fan of the team to kind of see that all come about now.
I think quite a lot of the cities in the UK, we're from Glasgow, an industrial city with lots of hardworking people, and from that, the culture that grows from it. Of course, Detroit, renowned for its cars, Motown, the music that came with it as well. As you said, one of the richest cities in the world. The affluence would have came from the car industry. But for me, growing up, it was always the music. That was what my mum and dad would listen to, the Sam and Dave, Marvin Gaye, Aretha Franklin. Just the music that I used to listen to, just incredible. And I still love it. Whenever I'm having a bad day at work and driving home and I've not got a podcast to catch up on, which is very rare these days, I listen to a wee bit of Motown. That always sets me right. It's just fantastic. What a great city to choose. But as you said, there's also the grit there, and that comes from the people, the workers that help build the city. In recent years, we've had Eminem, the 8 Mile, of course, that kind of made the city famous again. But for me, my first real things that I remember about Detroit and the lines would be, Studs, I don't know if you'd be the same for this one, would be Tim the Toolman Taylor in Home Improvement and Beverly Hills Cop. I just remember Eddie Murphy wearing the Lions leather jacket, Tim Tillman Taylor wearing his old Lions worn out jumper as well. So they always had this wee grit, as you said, this wee bit of like toughness about them. And what a team that you've got as well. And I like that you've went for a team that aren't perennial winners or achievers. That this is the joke, the laughing stock of the NFL, and they have been for a long time. What a difference it is since Dan Campbell's came in here.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a fan properly now, I guess, since maybe 2011, but kind of loosely following since 2009. And this is the best team we've had in that stretch, easily. And not maybe because of the individual personnel. I think the 2014 team was probably better. Stafford was just a bit young then and wasn't quite the player he was that he is now. But we had the number 2 defense in the NFL, along with having Stafford at quarterback in that year. And if there was any year with Stafford at quarterback, it was then. But as a team, as the way it plays in terms of chemistry, this is by far and away the best team we've had. So it's a great time to be a fan. Unfortunately, it looked like the division was going to be total rubbish until Green Bay decided to wake up on Thanksgiving and haven't stopped waking up since. But we'll get onto that, I'm sure. Absolutely. Before we get any further and start talking about the games, because we do have quite a lot to get through, let's start with our kickoff question, our opening question. So, with the Browns, the Dolphins, Cowboys, Rams, Steelers, and Eagles all failing at the first postseason hurdle, which fan base, Liam, should feel the most let down? Who are you going for from that bunch there?
Well, I'll just go for the obvious one, shall I?
Go for it. Let's get it out of the way. That's back into you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I'm going with the Cowboys. Has to be the Cowboys, doesn't it?
Has to be.
After every year the build up, every year, not quite over the line, shall we say, mildly.
Not quite.
Bottle merchants would be another way of saying it.
Do you think Jerry's podcast actually plays a role in the hype that goes around it? I know they are America's team. They've got the prime spots when it comes to like Thanksgiving and things like that. But do you think the hype is kind of stifling them a little bit? What do you think, Studs?
For me, I think Jerry's obviously very outspoken, and I'm pretty sure that if he offered people a premium pay-per-view Jerry Jones channel 24/7, they would probably pay it just to hear some of the stuff he comes out with. So, I mean, that's got to filter into the changing room and filter onto the players, and it must put them under immense pressure. Certain players will thrive under that pressure, but not everybody. You look at CD Lamb, he comes across, he's a guy, obviously, that jumped in to Mike McCarthy and says, give me the ball. He wanted to be the driving force of that offense. But was it week 4, I think Dan said he went in and did that. And he doesn't come across as the kind of prima donna with it. So he's obviously somebody that thrives under that pressure.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to be like that, I don't think. So for me, I think you're looking at Jerry, you really want him maybe to stay quiet. If it was 1 or 2 years since they'd won a Super Bowl, then yeah, fair enough. Let's keep hyping up. We're now, 20 years or something like that since the Cowboys last did a Super Bowl or something to that effect. So
yeah, I think it was 95 was the last one. We're coming up on a nice anniversary there for 19 years.
I think it's maybe time for Jerry to kind of pipe down and let the team go on with business.
Is there any other teams that maybe fan bases that really should have? What about the Eagles? What about the collapse that we've seen there? Matt, do you think that they have a right? And I know the Philadelphia fans are notorious for being vocal in their support, but also letting the team know when they're unhappy with them. Do they have a right this time?
I mean, they've just totally collapsed, haven't they? It's absolutely shocking. They were the last team to lose a game, I think, this year. And they've lost how many of their last 6 of their last 7, including against the Giants, the Cardinals, Seahawks. I'm not going to lump them in as a bad team, but like they shouldn't be losing those games if they are as good as they think they are. And, you know, they're playing against a Tampa team that had to win 5 of their last 6 to get in the worst division in football and have not looked good doing it. Like, the Eagles fans should be frustrated, but it's obvious. Like, it's so bad what's happened there. And I'm not going to be surprised if everyone gets fired. And I know that that's a massive overreaction to what's happened, given the success they've had. But Sirianni put the worst head coach the Lions have ever had, who was meant to be a defensive genius, who called the best fourth down or best play in defensive history in a Super Bowl, who can't call defense. And he put him in charge late in the season to try and turn it around. And they went from good but struggling and still winning games to losing comfortably. And it's all coming out now. All the former players who've played under Patricia are airing their dirty laundry today. And it's fantastic to see. So the fans should be having a go at the head coach for sure.
Howie Roseman's even taken some flack. He was one that everybody was lauding at the start of the season for the trades that they'd done, the picks that they'd made, and the draft as well. So even he's been getting it tight in the neck. Browns.
The problem is coaching, though. They've drafted really well, and the coaches have put the players in a position to lose. Roseman is still one of the executives of the year for me because their draft was exceptionally good.
Yeah.
But if the players are in a bad position, it's not the GM's fault, but the GM has got to stand up and say, I'm not taking responsibility for this, you're gone.
Yeah. I think it's funny in the fact that Sirianni's went, what did we say, 1-7 since he's outburst in the tunnel at Arrowhead to the Chiefs when they were giving him some sticks. So I've seen a lot of those kind of memes, which has made me chuckle, I must admit, today. But as Matt said there, they put Patricia in charge of the defence. They made that change when they were 10-1. They'd literally just beaten Buffalo, I think it was, and that's when they decided to make the switch at defensive coach. Now, the Buffalo game was probably their best game of the season. They absolutely showed everybody what they were capable of. That's the one time they've not struggled, and that's when they decided to make a change, which is a bit... That seems baffling to me that that's when you would make the change.
One of the crew members that was hoping to join us tonight was Kev. He's an Eagles fan, and something's came up, supposedly. We don't know what it could be. But he has said consistently all season that they've done just enough to get by. So that 10-1, the streak that they'd actually had, the last team, as you said, to lose a game, it was just getting there. I think it was... We all thought they were just about to find their stride and start to really hammer teams. But really, it was just the creeks that they were just patching holes in the ship as it's about to start sinking. Teams like the Dolphins, though, again, ball merchants, really, aren't they? That's what we've come to see. We've got some friends in our group chat who are Dolphins fans, and they were starting to believe. They were starting to get the hype, and I think there is reason to believe it. There is a good team there. There's some interesting parts of their defense there, the attack, but it's just not quite good enough. And when it comes to like the bad weather, I think we were all hoping that it was going to be a wee bit different. Well, Studs certainly wasn't hoping it was going to be different, but I guess they're the bad weather and they cut shrivel up and don't really put any show on like they had done in the nice warm days, Liam?
No, yeah, like I suppose I've gone to more of the games fully, but like they started off so hot, as you put it, like
Yeah.
you know, running over everyone, and then just slowly backed off, and then just kind of I think accumulated in this kind of weekend where I don't think the running game was like non-existent against the Chiefs. So yeah, it's something for them to try and solve somehow. We'll see if they can do it the other way around next season. Start off cold and work their way up.
I think it's the curse of the in-season. The show that they have on what's it called? Hard Knocks.
Hard Knocks.
Yeah, I think it's the curse of Hard Knocks. We saw it with the Jets, Aaron Rodgers, of course. I think that might be a curse. Nobody will be definitely volunteering for that next year. Right, fantastic, guys. Let's get into it then. Matt, the floor is yours. The LA Rams were humbled by your incredible Detroit Lions in a 24-23 thriller. How was the game for you?
Nail-biting and horrifying. It was a game of two halves. Offenses on both sides really fired in the first half. We scored touchdowns in our first three possessions. We held them to a field goal, and then they hit two touchdowns of their own. So our defense was non-existent on both sides. And then there were 9 points total in the second half. But both defenses didn't tighten up, though. They kind of just went bend, don't break, and there were key third down plays. But there was still plenty of yards happening. There was neither team broke 80 on the ground. So even though it looked like we were running the ball really well, we went away from it pretty quickly because we were being efficient through the air. It was a brilliantly cool game on offense by both teams. I mean, Puka Nacua is an absolute hero. What he's done this season is absolutely fantastic. One of your guys were inviting us on and was talking to Ant, who's one of my co-hosts. And he is a college football guy and was talking about Puka Nacua 15 months ago, saying, we must draft him. Like, he's a day two guy. We must draft this guy. He falls to the fifth round and is the best rookie wide receiver of all time, maybe. So he got 181 yards on the day. But we did just enough in key situations. The Rams, down one, were in field goal range and were stopped short of the line to gain and could have gone for a field goal, but they had a holding penalty. Their kicker was really bad. It was 50 yards plus, and he's 45% from 50. But we accepted the holding penalty, and we couldn't defend third and long all night. But we had one hold there, and they ended up punting on 4th and 14 when it would have been a 61-yard attempt. And then we were able to bleed the clock. And that was the difference in the game. We forced them into two field goals when we took a touchdown, and then when they could have got one more, we gambled and we won. But it's a toss of a coin because one of my other guys says, I'd rather have a team in 3rd and 3 than 3rd and 21 because we always give up the 3rd and 21 for some reason. It's like when people just have to go for it, we can't defend deep. But if it's a short yardage thing, people only aim for that sort of short yardage area. If people tried to burn us over the top, we'd be in real trouble. But there's something weird about that. But Dan Campbell deserves this. Brad Holmes deserves this. And the ownership have been fantastic since they came on board. That changed 3.5 years ago, just at the end of the old regime. And she's installed the right people who've hired the right people. And it's been a long time coming. But I'm not coming down. I'm never coming down off this.
Neither should you, mate. No, neither should you. And actually, I was listening to a podcast today, and they were talking about how the ownership have made such a big difference. Sorry, I can't remember who the owner is now.
So she's called Sheila Ford Hamp. She inherited from her mother, who was Martha Firestone Ford, who inherited from her late husband, who was William Clay Ford, who was one of the sons of the Ford family. So
amazing. So a fair bit of finances behind them there. But I think this is something that we're maybe seeing now is how there's going to be some fresh ideas within the league. There's quite a few long-standing head coaches are stepping away from their clubs, not retiring altogether by the sounds of it. It sounds as if they're going to either be moving upstairs with Pete Carroll and the Seahawks, or Bill Belichick is, as we heard today, has been interviewed by the Atlanta Falcons, which I thought was hilarious. Someone had tweeted, can you tell us about a time that you've faced adversity and challenge? So we will see some fresh faces in the league, and I think that little bit of freshness and that little bit of modern thinking certainly is doing wonders for the Lions. Dan Campbell, Liam, I think he's been a revelation at the team. I think about a joke figure at the start about biting kneecaps and everybody thought it was going to be the same old Lions. Maybe I had a wee chuckle, and that's why we on the crew could have them as a wee soft spot for them. But now they have to be taken seriously. We saw that at the start of the season, Stud. I'll get to you about your thoughts on that as well. But Dan Campbell, Liam, what a difference this guy has made to this team.
I know, yeah, I think he's been an amazing figurehead for the Lions, I think, and I think we all loved when they were on. Was it the Hard Knocks, or what was the Hard Knocks they were on, wasn't it? Yeah, and he came across so well in that. It was, just all the chats with players, even doing the exercises when he had, when he was what was it, like penalty or something like that, or some sort of forfeit he had to do. So, up downs and stuff like that, and just being one of the guys, if nothing else. But I think it's even more than that. Like, you've got Ben Johnson there as the OC, making, also he's hotly tipped, I think, for many a job interview this off season. So it's just been, even though they're one of our rivals in our division, they are definitely a fun team to watch. I do have a slight soft spot for them. Just always good to see them. They just do I suppose they're kind of similar to the 49ers. They're just fun to watch at times, aren't they? So I think,
yeah, fun and frisky, as we say on the review crew. We've always got a space in our hearts for a fun and frisky team, and the Lions certainly have been that over the past couple of seasons. Started some come to you the start of the season. Arrowhead opening fixture. I'm sure you were full of optimism for the season ahead after winning the Super Bowl, but you guys got a fright, and I think going to Arrowhead, to the home of the champions, that was certainly a statement of intent from the Lions. Did you see much in them at that time that you thought this could be a different season from them?
I think you kind of saw what they were going to have, that try and push that running back tandem from kind of more or less day one. I thought that seen Montgomery. I think Montgomery had a really good day against us, from memory. Obviously, all the way back in week one, I don't think we did anything against the running attack of the Lions. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown's just an absolute freak athlete. He is unreal. Let's be brutally honest. He's just so good. And again, I know he didn't get the touchdown this weekend, but he's that last catch on that play to end the game this weekend was so clutch for the Lions that it just shows his importance to the team. Goff loves him as a target, obviously, because he just doesn't seem to be covered. He's an absolute matchup nightmare for defences. So I think week one, for me, the frustrating thing from our side is what's plagued us all season, and it was the drops in key situations. There was one that particularly stands out, and it was the Kadarius Toney one, where he was just wide open. He had an easy 10 yards to keep it moving, and he's turned his head before he's got that ball in his hands, and you actually see it bouncing out. So, but again, take nothing away from the Lions. They come into Arrowhead and they took the W at the end of the day in week one, and I think that was a statement of intent for them and what they wanted to do this season for me.
Matt, tell us a bit about the defense that the Lions have got. You'll be better placed than any of us. We maybe see a cursive look at the Lions. You'll know them in much greater detail. We're certainly more familiar with the offensive players, but who's really stood out for you for the defense this year?
Well, I mean, you can't have a talk about the defense without talking Aiden Hutchinson first. He, per PFF, leads the league in pressures now after wildcard weekend this season. Wow. He's an absolute beast. He's not been converting the pressures to sacks, and I really think that's a product of him being the standout on the line with not really having a lot else there. Liam McNeil's had a breakout year as a D tackle. He is a third-year guy now, so he hasn't got long left on his rookie deal. But they tried to play him at nose tackle, and it just kind of didn't really work. So they've shifted him out to the 3, and he's been fantastic since then. But he had a little bit of time out with injury at the end of the season, so he's only just started getting back now. Defensive line, otherwise, is a bit makeshift. It does fine without being spectacular, but we're still a top 5 run defense this year. We've really given up nothing on the ground in particular. We just struggle against rushing quarterbacks. We can't deal with them at all. So if we come up against the Chiefs again, I think Mahomes could tear us a new one with that. Or, I mean, Baltimore, if we go all the way, there's just AFC teams that I really think we should be losing to comfortably for that aspect alone. The back 7 is a big problem. Now, our linebackers have come up. They are better than they were last year when they were horrible. And they're now middling. Jack Campbell's had rookie issues as a first-round linebacker. He was really bad to begin with. And actually, everyone thought he was going to start as a rookie linebacker, first-rounder. And he didn't because he wasn't there yet. And so Alex Anzalone and Derek Barnes were the starters. Barnes has come on big from being benched last year to being a reasonable starter. Anzalone was a top 10 linebacker in the league for the first half of this year and then dropped off a bit with an injury, and he's struggled to come back, but last week was good. The DBs, they need big investment. They took Cam Sutton from the Steelers last year in a reasonable deal, and he's been asked to play cornerback 1, but at best he's a good cornerback 2, and he's just getting burned. He looks like a fish out of water. At this point, I'm really worried about that. And then you've got Kindle Vildor as cornerback 2 now, which is just rough. I mean, he was picked up off waivers in week 11, and he was CB4, and he's just elevated himself up because everyone else has been poor. And that's what we're dealing with at cornerback. On the other hand, though, Brian Branch, who was everyone's darling in the draft but somehow fell, has been exceptional. And there are many jokes with Green Bay fans about how Brian Branch is considering he traded up 3 places to get him in the draft last year. But he's been a top 3 nickel in the NFL this year, and it really shows. He has rookie mistakes. He gives up DPIs a little bit too easily, but he's sticky in coverage, great as a blitzer. He's been a big addition. We just need to sort out cornerback 1, and we'll be okay. But it's a work in progress.
It certainly is. I don't need to even come to you about who's your star in the O-line. Of course, we know that it's Graham Glasgow. Glasgow being the Scottish podcast, that's our guy representing. Good man. Glasgow is the American podcast that I like to listen to, refers to him as.
He is actually Glasgow, though. Everyone says Glasgow. It is Glasgow.
Get out. Yeah, terrific. I'll have a wee chuckle to myself on that one. What about the QB then? Liam, I'll come to you. I thought it was quite heartening to see just how the team, the fan base, and pretty much the city as well just rallied around Jared Goff. The atmosphere in that stadium looked incredible when they were chanting his name, and Matt Stafford's ears must have been absolutely ringing as he took to that field the other night. It was incredible. How do you think that wave of emotion that poured out for Jared Goff, how much do you think that played a factor in him leading the team to victory?
Well, yeah, obviously it's going to. I don't think it's going to have a factor. I think this was also the nerves I'm sure you'd have been under to come in before him, but he's been doing it pretty much all season, hasn't he? Been,
yes.
And I think it was just summed up. The clip was getting going around the social media was of Dan Campbell throwing him one of the game balls, just saying, you're good enough for Detroit, sort of thing. That just kind of summed it up, I think, quite nicely. It was typical Dan Campbell, actually, wasn't it? Just he's obviously had his well-documented struggles in LA, obviously at the end and things like that, but he's not really done that much wrong when he's been in Detroit, really, overall. I know he's had some ups and downs at times, but he's been pretty stable, I think, from what I've seen of him anyway, certainly. So yeah, I think and it'll be a well-deserved thing to get off his back as well, to have that victory in the playoffs over the Rams and then moving on to the next round to see where the story leads.
It was nice to get one over Sean McVay a little bit there. I think that just added a little bit of bit of sweetener to the win for them. 277 yards, 22 for 27, and the one touchdown for Goff. Matt Stafford, though, starts just pivoting to the Rams for a little bit. Stafford had 25 for 36, 367 yards and 2 touchdowns. But of course, as we said, he had the cheat code that is Booker Nakua with him as well. What a face-off between the two guys. You can see there was a good mutual respect for the two of them there. Stafford obviously will still have loved his time in Detroit. He got to go to LA. He got to get that big move. He got to get the Super Bowl that he craved and probably deserved with his performances. He got hot at the right time. But so did the ownership, and when they sold him and traded, so that you've been able to build the Lions have been able to build this team. What did you make of Stafford then, Studs? Do you think it was he was on to hide into nothing, really, wasn't he? Did you see him coming out into the stadium and the boos that they were there? It was wonderful to see.
Yeah, I think he must have knew the reception he was going to get. I don't think he comes across as quite as an intelligent guy when you listen to him speaking. He's, again, what he did for Detroit, he was loved there during that time. There's no doubt about that. He put his body through absolute hell for that team. And I think we've all seen the clips. The particular one that stands out is the one where he does his collarbone and he comes back in to throw the final touchdown and win the game. So, as I say, it just goes to show what that city and what that team meant to him when he was playing for them. As you say, I think he was on to an absolute hiding to nothing. So if he beat the Lions would have been cursing him because he came back and he ruined their playoff hopes, and the Bobby Lane curse was continuing because of Matt Stafford. Or if what happened on Sunday, as we've seen the Lions beat them, it really wasn't a no-lose situation. But I think Matt Stafford, and obviously we've spoke about Puka Nakua, they're two guys that can absolutely walk out of this game. Their head held high. They literally left everything out in the field. What really surprised me about this one was Cooper Kupp and how little involvement he had in the game. If you look at his actual total yards, he's the number 6 wide receiver for the Rams in this game, behind somebody who I'm very familiar with in Demarcus Robinson, behind Tutu Atwell, behind the very well-known Ronnie Rivers as well. Do you know what I mean? It's very surprising that you're looking at somebody who pretty much carried the Rams to the Super Bowl when they won it.
Yeah.
And I get he's had injury issues the last couple of years, but he completely disappeared for me in this game. And again, that could be a credit to the Lions defence. And Branch maybe was shadowing him and keeping him quiet, so they were maybe targeting Nakua on the other cornerbacks and stuff. So it might have been a game plan from Dan Campbell, I don't know, but I would certainly expect one of my stars like Cooper Kupp to be more involved in the biggest game of the Rams season.
There's going to be a wee theme throughout the games from the weekend, and I thought it was the influence of tight ends in matches, and it was good to see, Matt, that Sam Laporta, even though it was heavily wrapped up before the match, his left knee, he was back and he made a difference. 3 receptions for 14 yards and 1 touchdown. Is he possibly a difference maker for your team if you are going to continue on this journey this year?
He's been a top 5 tight end this year in the NFL, and I try and say that without hyperbole and being biased, but I genuinely believe he's been above Hawkinson in terms of what he provides to us, because it's not just the receiving, but he's been a very able blocker as well, which is really important for our scheme. But it was only 14 yards, but 2 of those catches were so important. The first one was that touchdown, which is maybe the most beautiful play of the weekend. And it's only a 3-yard touchdown or 2-yard touchdown. But it's jumbo set with no wide receivers on the field. You've got a 6th offensive lineman, a fullback, and 2 tight ends. And then they split out from their I formation with everyone on the line into 2 tight ends and the fullback splitting out. So you've got 6 offensive linemen and no wide receivers all lined up as wide receivers. And by doing that, what you did is you had all the heavy guys in on defense. So you had a defensive D end, Hoyt for the Rams, having to cover Sam Laporta as a receiver. And that's what Ben Johnson does. You know, he just schemes up something that's just really simple, but actually you watch it in motion, and you're like, oh, you literally can't defend this. And you're like, okay, but they've got heavies up front, and that's going to be difficult to allow Goff to get this off. But you've got the 6th offensive lineman in, so it's not even that risky. It's just a beautifully designed play. But the second catch was potentially more important, which is the Lions were behind the sticks, just outside of field goal range. Laporta catches the ball behind the line of scrimmage and somehow, in a diving effort, gets 5 yards, which allows us to get the 54-yard field goal, which wins us the game. So it may not be very many yards, but massively important. He's been a revelation to us.
Are you worried about Ben Johnson come the end of this season, wherever it ends for the Lions? Do you think he is in a rush to leave? He'll be much sought after, especially with such high-profile positions becoming available. Are you worried that you could maybe see him leaving this year?
I'm not sure. He has 7 interview offers at the moment, so he's very much in demand. Very highly regarded. He had a bad stretch this year. In the middle of the season, he kind of went a bit weird. And he came back strong towards the end of the year, so I'm not worried about that. But he declined an interview from the Carolina Panthers last year. And one of the reasons he gave is that he didn't want to move his family. He said, my family's settled here. They go to school. I don't want to take them out of that environment. And it's going to take a lot, therefore, for someone to break that reasoning. Now, one of the reasons might be, I don't want to go and work for Dave Tepper. And this is the excuse I'm going to give, which is perfectly reasonable. But it exists in my mind an idea that perhaps he just doesn't want to be a head coach and is quite content being an OC, but he's going to entertain the interviews anyway. So I'm kind of 50-50 on whether he's going to go. If he does go, I'm not worried. And I think a lot of Lions fans are where I'm at with this. We fired Anthony Lynn as our first offensive coordinator in this regime about 6 months in, and Dan Campbell took over play calling, and the offense markedly improved. And then Campbell and Johnson together built the scheme before Johnson then took over play calling duties. So Campbell knows all of this like the back of his hand. And actually, for being a rah-rah figurehead guy, he's incredibly smart, and it gets overlooked and people underestimate him. But he is very much an X's and O's guy. So I'm fine. If Ben wants to go, goes with our best wishes. He's delivered some fantastic football here, but we'll be okay.
I always think of him as a bit like Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool, just the rock and roll football. Seems to be what he's into. I love that he's approach to 4th downs, just going for it, and just the mentality that creates within the team. That if they go for it and they get it enough times, that team, whenever it comes to a big play and an important match, they've got that wealth of experience and those feelings that they can do it. They're going to help. That's going to help them push them over that line. That they're going to get those yards that they need to get the first down. Really interesting.
It's really weird just on that point that Dan Campbell gets this rep, and Brandon Staley, who goes for it almost as much as he did, or maybe slightly more, doesn't have that rep. And I think it's because Dan goes for it in the right moments, and he didn't last year, but he's kind of learned a bit and he's pulled himself back just a tad. Still goes for it a lot, but he's light years ahead of other coaches in terms of win percentage increased due to those decisions. The analytics are all there, and I don't think he's a massive analytics guy, but they agree with what he's doing, and that makes a big difference to us.
Amazing. Anything else that we want to cover from the Lions 24, Rams 23? I think we've covered that pretty extensively, guys. It was really, really good, interesting discussion on that there. Anything else? Fantastic. This is one I think we've all been looking forward to getting our teeth into. This is the nice, juicy Texan steak of a match that we can get started into. Liam, what an opening. What a first half from your boys. It finished Cowboys 32, Green Bay Packers 48. How did Jordan Love pull that off? That was incredible.
Well, talking about the first half, the first 3 plays nearly didn't go the way we were wanting them to. I think it was Jones ran for no yards. Then we got away for a sack on Love with a penalty in the defence. And then we had another, I think, a 3-yard loss from Jones on run. But after that, as soon as Love made that kind of throw to Dobbs in the middle, Dobbs was open all game in the middle of the field. I don't know what was going on with the defence there, but he just settled in and took 7 minutes off the clock for that first drive or something like that. It was an impressive sight to see, and I think we've kind of done a lot of that. We've done it a few times now all season. Is taking winning the toss and taking the ball. We did it against the Lions, similar, and just I think that's the kind of key to get ourselves ahead and make Dallas have to come back. Even though if we won score, always keep that kind of that wee foot in front sort of thing, and we just didn't really look back.
You didn't really give them any hope, I thought, when I was watching the game. Every time Dallas looked as if they were going to get a bit back into it, started to get a bit of momentum, the Packers just crushed them a little bit more. They put points on the board when they had to at important times. It was even going into the half when the Cowboys had just got that touchdown, just to give them that wee bit of glimmer of hope. And they were talking about, was it the Jags last season had managed to do a remarkable comeback. It didn't feel like that was the way it was going to be. We're saying this, it was such a one-sided match at times. It felt like Dak Prescott got 403 yards. He was 41 of 60 with 3 touchdowns. The difference between him and Jordan Love with 16 of 21, 272 yards and 3 touchdowns was the 2 interceptions for Dak. And that, I think, was the real change in the flow of the game studs. What did you make of it? Did you manage to catch much of it?
Yeah, I kind of sat and watched this one, and at one point when it was 27-0 to the Packers, I was probably in as much disbelief as Liam at that point as to what was actually going on. But I mean, the Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, the Jair Alexander, and the pick that he got on CeeDee Lamb. I know Dan on the crew he's an advocate of pass interference on that one. He feels that Jair's maybe got a hold of his arm, but even so, it's still such an athletic catch for me from Alexander, and that slant route from CeeDee Lamb has been so effective for the Cowboys. It really has. I think they even tried it in their first drive as well, and it was an uncharacteristic drop for CeeDee Lamb, if memory serves me. Where he had the 10 yards, he had the first down, and it just it dropped out of his hands. So the Cowboys looked off pretty much from their first drive. And I think the game, the score, the stats for me in this one don't tell the story of the game. It makes it look a lot closer than what it was. The Cowboys, a lot of their stuff came in garbage time for me when the Packers had really took their foot off the gas. They knew the game was won. And for me, I think 27-0, I think that's really... Well, in all honesty, they could have probably took Love off at half-time and probably still won this game, which sounds quite disrespectful to the Cowboys, but I think the Cowboys had just been that bad. They really underperformed under the bright lights.
It was a bit of a signal for the Cowboys to see the Packers' second-string quarterback coming on for the last few plays, really, really rubbing their nose in it. And I think many of the Cowboys fans thought they might have seen him at some point, but it was after an absolute hiding from them boys. But it just wasn't to be. It was weird, Matt.
So
sorry,
did anybody see Jimmy Johnson at halftime going absolutely nuts? I've seen it. I've seen the clip on Twitter, and if I would highly recommend, if you haven't seen it, go and find this clip of him going nuts on the halftime show, trying to rally them boys, but they obviously never played it into the changing room.
It certainly wasn't the inch by inch chat, the monologue that we all know and love. It was just raging, and there's been so many former Cowboys players that have been on taken to Twitter and to just put on rants, and the meltdown that's came from it is a little bit glorious. It's beautiful, beautiful. What was the standout for you, Matt? What did you thoroughly enjoy from this? Because I think many fans of the teams that aren't the Cowboys have really enjoyed this one.
I mean, if you're in the NFC, you hate the Cowboys if you're not the Cowboys. I mean, just grown up with that. So even as a team which has grown up to hate the Packers, this was glorious. It was just fantastic to watch. And Dak Prescott didn't lose this game. Like, I know he had 2 picks, and they were bad picks, but if your defense can't stop anything, then you're not going to win. And they were talking about that on the coverage. It's like, well, if the defense can wake up, maybe you've got a shot. But if they don't, it doesn't matter how many points you score, and it didn't. I mean, Love had 16 completions, and they comfortably won the game. Like, it was just egregiously bad. And part of it is scheme. I mean, the Cowboys have struggled against the rushing attack all year, and Aaron Jones just went off. He was fantastic. So between Aaron Jones having 118 yards and 3 touchdowns, when Jordan Love has 13 yards per attempt compared to Dak Prescott's 6.7, you're not winning. And Love scares me. Because I felt fairly comfortable at the start of this year that he wasn't going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. Even if he was good, I didn't think you could go 3 back-to-back. And now I'm like, there's a chance. There's a legitimate chance that he could just be really good, because he was an out-of-structure guy who's been taught to play in structure by one of the best. And you can see that progression. And he throws weird. Like, I don't like watching him as a quarterback. Just aesthetically, it doesn't look pretty to me, but it's very effective. And, I mean, the Cowboys, what do you do? 3 12-win seasons in a row, haven't gone to a championship game. The Packers have more playoff wins in your stadium than you do, which is just the best stat ever. What, do they burn it all down? The thing is, they've drafted well. I mean, you've got a defensive player, Ferguson, fantastic. But in terms of, you DeMarcus Lawrence and all those guys on that defensive line, Micah Parsons is maybe a defensive player of the year candidate every single year. They have no hope of winning a Super Bowl. They shouldn't feel like they have any hope of winning a Super Bowl because they just aren't gritty enough. They don't have to go through enough adversity. And it's why Miami lost. They're an autumn team. They're not a winter team, even though they play indoors. There's just something about January where they fall to pieces, and it's glorious.
A few things that I'd quite liked about it. One of the talking about stats that popped up was Dan Quinn. His former coordinators are Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel, and Matt LaFleur. And Matt LaFleur seemed to have his number the full game. You mentioned the defense. The defense just seemed to start way back. They were not getting up. Like you said, there was no grit. They weren't getting up in the face of the Packers at all. They were allowing them the freedom of the stadium. It was really weird.
Do you know how many sacks Jordan Love? Do you know how many sacks Jordan Love took, Keith?
Was it 0?
Yeah, and when you're looking, Matt mentioned you've got Lawrence on one side, Micah Parsons on the other. How good were the Packers at containing those guys? They did whatever they have to. I think they got one holding call maybe on Parsons. I think I remember. Was that this week or was that last week? Parsons got his first holding call in 3 months. I can't remember, but there was something about that. But Jordan Love was just so efficient in getting either out the pocket to get away for that rush, or getting the ball away quick out on his 21 attempts, 16 completions, whatever it was. Do you know what I mean? So you're looking, if you're not going to sack the quarterback, you're not going to win a game. You need to affect the quarterback, and you're looking at somebody, first playoff game in a big, massive stadium like the Cowboys. They should have been putting pressure on him from the very first snap to see if he could live up to it.
I think
you mentioned. Sorry, Liam, you go back.
I think Parsons only had one pressure the whole game. I think, and that just, and I think it was an unblocked. He wasn't even blocked. That was only when he was unblocked on that one when he got to it. But so I think, our O-line held up well. I think our right tackle, Zach Tom, has been outstanding. I can't remember what his PFS stats now, but he's up there now. Like, he's just kind of come on leaps and bounds throughout the season. I like that. I think we just, talking about Jordan Love, I think we just had cadence. We had, he checked out of plays when he needed to. He just made all the right calls. He just saw what the defense was doing and changed the play we needed to. So it was, don't get me wrong, that last 6 minutes of that game was a hard watch, a worrying watch when we put our backups in and put our starters back in and put our backups in again. But yeah, it was, we just kind of, Matt LaFleur, I think, had a great play calling day. I think some of his play calling was immense. That Musgrave play where Musgrave was wide open. I don't know what the stat was. He was just nowhere was near him. That was a great play. Yeah, I think it was all around. As I kind of lean up to the week, it was all about this all the chat about house money. We've got nothing to lose, all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And we just went out there with no fear, or it seemed to be that way, and just if we lose, we lose. If we win, can't get any better, and it couldn't get any better really. So.
And that's the thing. It's this young team that you've got. Romeo Dubs was there. Luke Musgrave, 52 yards with 3 receptions. They got a touchdown. Dontavian Wicks got a touchdown as well. Tucker Kraft played his part. Players like Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed didn't even get any receptions at all.
He's been our top receiver all year. And
exactly.
Didn't get,
so there's more to come from you guys. Just coming back to the Cowboys, and I don't want to stick the boot in too much, but you mentioned the quarterbacks and having issues. I think we saw in the first half the real issue was CD Lamb and Dak just were not vibing, and the cameras picked up on that. That's getting picked up from the sidelines and from the cameras and people watching. That's not the time for that to be happening. There was a bit of a difference straight after as the second half started. CD Lamb got, I think, 3 receptions in a row, and they looked as if they were starting to cook. But by that time, it was just far too late. That was not the time for teams to have fallouts. Dak should have been well above that. He should have been getting his team rallied and getting everybody on side, no matter what it takes. Yeah, terrific. We'll get to the Packers on the preview show on Thursday with Dan will be hosting that, and we've got some special guests lined up for that one as well. But Liam, you must be full of hope going into the next game.
Well, it's like I said, it was house money this week. It's only house money next week, so we've got nothing to lose. We're not expected to win again. I think it's going to be as I kind of touched on, going into the game all week. Your kind of heart was saying, I think we've got a chance to win this. We all seem to do well against Dallas. Obviously, your head's saying otherwise. How Dallas has been all season, but I kind of went into the game. I think believing that we had a good chance. I think San Francisco is a different.
Yeah.
A different.
I can't see Shanahan letting something like that happen.
And I suppose our recent history against San Francisco has not been great in the playoffs, shall we say? But again, we've been. Love is on up every week from the Steelers. I think from the Steelers game, kind of mid-season, he's just been getting better and better and better. And I think each week you're kind of like, oh, is that his ceiling? Can he get any better? And he seems to just be doing that extra wee thing. You just kind of still, as we kind of touched on many times in this podcast, I've mentioned about it's like a year to learn what love is. We know what he is now. It's just kind of how high can he go, I suppose. But I know it's only. I'm still a bit reluctant to say it fully because it's only been how many games it's been? 8 or 9 games. But but we'll get into that more in the off season, I'm sure. But yeah, so it's.
Listen, I like what you said. House money, and if there's anywhere to hit the jackpot, it's the 49ers and a wee bit of a green and gold rush there. Superb. Okay. I think that's pretty much covered. Anything, Matt? Anything else you'd like to add? Just a wee giggle at the Cowboys' expense?
No, I'm just looking forward to Lions Packers for the NFC Championship game at Ford Field.
That'd be terrific. Definitely get you boys back on then if that is the case. Let's head to across the state then for the Browns travelling to the Texans. Now, another darling of the crew, the Texans and DeMeco Ryan's team have been wonderful to watch. Was it fun and fruity? Is it feisty? Fun and feisty, we say for the Texans and the Lions this season.
Fun and
Wonderful
frisky.
to watch. Fun and frisky, that's it one. Apologies. CJ Stroud. What a debut season from him. How impressed have you been, Matt, of CJ Stroud and the rookie quarterback? Of course, went number 2 in the draft this year. Panthers must be kicking themselves now.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of watching him live in college, actually. So when I went to Detroit for Thanksgiving 2021, I went to Michigan, Ohio State as well in the Big House. So that was a really cool experience. And Stroud lost that day. He still could make all the throws in college, and you could see that. The only question on Stroud ever was, can he do it in the big game? And his final game of his college career, he should have won the national championship. He did enough to win the national championship and kind of got screwed by Georgia, which is a shame. But then in the pre-draft process, I kind of talked myself into he's got no bottle. And I don't really know why, because he clearly should have been QB1. And looking back now, it's so obvious to say, but with the prototypical build, which clearly makes a difference in the NFL, there's only very few guys that have succeeded less than 6 foot. Stroud has just got he can make every throw. His throwing motion, again, is really weird. He likes to kind of jump with 2 feet in the air and then throw, which is just like, you can't be taught to do that. You just must be natural. But
yeah, he still gets some power.
Him and Love are kind of in a similar sort of tier for me right to now with the way Love is playing. Both of them just feel similar to me. So, but Stroud was magnificent. And I mean, Nico Collins just having the absolute year of his life. And he's from Michigan, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So he's really coming alive. But the Texans are doing it without Tank Dell, who was their best receiver this year. And he's gone down on IR. And Mechie's coming alive. And Dalton Schultz and Brevin Jordan, Nico Collins and Xavier Hutchinson, Robert Woods. They've just got weapons. And I mean, it feels a bit like the Lions. They're understated. But it works. The chemistry is there. And who's going to stop them? They put 45 on up to what week 16, week 17 was one of the top 5 defenses in NFL history.
Yes.
And they put 45 on them. It's fantastic to watch.
It certainly was. The Texans doing that. And I think there's a wee similarity between the Texans and the Lions, as you said. Devin Singletary and Montgomery, kind of a bit of symmetry there between the two of them. One of the players that's maybe disappointed me for the Texans was Dameon Pierce. I thought he had a promising rookie season. I was really looking forward to seeing what he could do this year, but really hasn't pushed on at all. But Singletary coming in this year certainly has done. Collins taking over. It's just been a bit of a revelation, and he's just got that great symmetry studs with the CJ Stroud. What a difference he's made. 96 yards from 6 receptions, and he got a touchdown as well in the game at the weekend there against the Browns. It was really, really weird to see the Browns playing so poorly and being cut open so easily at times.
I think you seen like the odd couple of flashes last year in Nico Collins. There was like certain games you seen and he just seemed to explode, or he'd pull a catch out of nowhere that you just saw, wait a minute, there's something in this guy. And I think, obviously, Matt mentioned there, Tank Dell has been the best receiver for the Texans until he went down. Collins has just stepped up big time. Collins and Schultz, to be fair, so taking nothing away from Dalton Schultz as well. Those two guys have really picked up that load. But again, Collins was having a good season alongside Tank Dell. CJ Stroud was shown that he could supply multiple targets.
Yes.
And it's just, he just keeps, for me, CJ Stroud just keeps seeming to be evolving his game. He's getting more comfortable in the system as the season goes on. And at this time of year, that's when you want to be seeing these guys hitting form. And CJ Stroud is really doing that. I joked in the preview crew a couple of weeks ago when I was getting stick about the Arrowhead Invitational. And I said, for me, the way that the Arrowhead Invitational comes back is the Texans get into Baltimore. And I've got it in my predictor as well. I've got the Texans beating the Ravens. Do you know what I mean? So I'm fully behind the whole CJ Stroud thing. He's getting more comfortable in the system. He's gaining in confidence. And as Matt said, you're looking at what that defense of the Browns, he's just dropped 45 on them. He has just absolutely destroyed them.
Liam, would you say the Texans are maybe a bit further ahead in their planning, their growth than DeMeco Ryans was probably expect them to be?
I think you would have to say that with the last couple of seasons when they've been, say that the second pick in the draft this year, so they've been, they nearly got the first round pick, and then had that wonderful last week 17 win, and went dropped down to second. So yeah, they've kind of obviously hit the jackpot. I think with Stroud, he's been phenomenal all season. So they've just kind of seemed to build on that, and then just gaining confidence, and everyone just seems to be bought in. I think with what they're doing, I think it's kind of a bit like I kind of heard one of the podcasts talking about obviously the San Francisco element of buying into the whole scheme, of buying into what they're doing and taking it on. And they seems to they've just seemed to be doing the exact same thing, just brought that kind of same mentality over with the coaching change, and just seem to be going from strength to strength.
Towards the end of the season, Joe Flacco had 4 games in a row with over 300 yards. And Matt, this seemed to be where Joe Flacco turned from a beautiful princess back into a pumpkin. And it was sad to see in a way, because I think everybody enjoyed the fairy tale of the Browns actually getting rid of Matt Canada and finally actually getting the win. Am I getting mixed up here? Is that the Steelers?
Right, Matt Canada was the Steelers.
So it was. Sorry, no. Just the number of quarterbacks that they've been through. Deshaun Watson, who I don't think there's many fans of him, and not many people want him to do well. It's a little bit poetic that the Texans are moving on at the Browns' expense when Deshaun Watson's not there at the moment. But Joe Flacco came in and he kind of turned things around. They were making them interesting to watch and making them exciting. They were getting them flowing again. David Njoku was starting to really come onto a game. Do you have a wee bit of sadness in how it seems to have gone for Joe Flacco? Can you see him coming back for another year? Matt,
sorry, I'll have to take myself off mute. Yeah, he's played himself into a job somewhere. He'll be a backup somewhere, and he'll probably be the first person a team calls if their starter goes down around the league. It is worth mentioning that he did not have an interception-free game for the Browns. He had, in his previous 5 starts to this game, a pick against the Rams, a pick against Jacksonville, 3 against the Bears, 2 against Houston, and 1 against the Jets. Like, the defense has been winning games while he has been facilitating the offense. He, again, was not bad enough for Cleveland to lose this game, given what they have produced over the season. The defense having an absolute nightmare is the reason why both Texas teams lost their respective games. But yeah, love Flacco. He gives us hope for all older people that they can still play the game.
I'm hoping for a kicker spot somewhere. I'll have to maybe settle for a long snapper.
I mean, Reece Sammett's just come over, isn't he? I don't know if you saw that. The Wales winger.
Yes, actually.
Yeah, he's gone over to the International Player Pathway program. So there are people transitioning over.
I can see it happening. I think that might be one of our kickoff questions for the Thursday preview crew. Dan had to put that in today. I'll be interested to see how he gets on and where he sees himself. I think we were thinking that he could possibly be a run back, but possibly a wing back.
He's 6'3", 210, so he can't be a running back. I think he's too big. So it'll have to be a wide receiver or maybe a kick returner. I mean, he runs the 100 meters in 10.5, 10.6. So
Amazing.
He's a fast guy.
Amazing. There was lots of talk for the Cleveland Browns about how well they'd done this season, and as you said, that was built on the defense, and nobody really expected them to get as far as they did. I don't think anyone really expected the collapse that we saw either. Do Do you think this was probably the best that they could have really hoped for this year? Maybe have they exceeded expectations, Stud, or should they feel a wee bit let down? We talked about it at the start of the kick-off question.
I think ultimately when you get into the wild card round, divisional round, you get into the playoffs, you always want a little bit more. I don't think there's a fan base about that wouldn't want to go that one step at a time mentality. If we can get through this round, let's see who we've got next. Can we get through that round? I think there was a big wave of emotion, probably looking at maybe week 17 after Flacco had secured that spot for them. As you'd mentioned, we'd seen the previous game against the Texans was the game Amari Cooper blew up for his 265 yards or whatever it was. David Irn-Cru, you mentioned, he'd been really stepping up under Flacco as well. So for me, I think the Browns maybe did expect a little bit more. And I think with that defence and how it had been performing all season, they were well within their rights to do so. They just didn't, again, similar to the Cowboys, they just did not perform under the bright lights. And again, you're looking at what CJ Stroud was able to do. I think the only person I remember getting a hand on him was Osamoa, well, JOK, we'll call him. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that name. But he was the only one I actually remember from watching it, getting laying a glove on CJ Stroud. I don't remember seeing Myles Garrett getting anywhere near him. And again, Denzel Ward was completely ineffective in the secondary as well. I do think it was quite cute for the Texans, and the reason I say that is they seem to realise that they could get the beating of Newsome, and I think he got burned in a lot of big plays for the Cleveland secondary, and I think that was a specific tactic for the Texans. They knew which cornerbacks to target, and they were putting the likes of Collins on him, and that's where the ball was going.
Liam Bryan, that regularly hosts the review crew, has been banging the drum for Kevin Stefanski for a while now to be Coach of the Year. Has DeMeco Ryans overtaken him with this and the change in fortunes that the Texans have got? Has this one really sealed that one for you?
I think it possibly could. I suppose how do you become Coach of the Year if you've lost to one of your rivals for that title? I suppose.
Yeah.
But fair, he's done. You can't really take it away from what he's done with his 4 quarterbacks. And obviously the defense that they had. But I suppose that's the other thing kind of going. Obviously, we touched on how good their defense was this season, but now the season is done for them. You never really see it really repeated fully again after a year later, or really difficult to get to that same level again. Can they do that again? It's going to be an interesting off season and into next season. With Watson, I suppose, coming back, he's not really performed, really, has he? For the most part, when he's been in. So they've been living off the defense all this time. Can that shift at all? That's what time will tell. We shall see.
Anything else from the Browns at the Texans? What a fantastic result for them. I really hope that the Texans can push on, keep going next week.
I've got one thing I know I shared it with the Gridiron Crew boys earlier on, and it's my favourite quote about this the Browns at Texans for a PFT commentator on CJ Stroud. He's got such good touch. Deshaun Watson probably wants a massage from him. As soon as I seen that, I buckled. That was me and working my lunch. I could not move when I seen that. So
there's been some great patters from the broadcasting agencies over in America on the what was the other one about relying heavily on the D as well.
The guy talking to MJD about riding the D, and Boris Jones just looks at him.
Terrific. We'll get to that end of the season. Everybody's getting a wee bit tired. They're pushing boundaries a wee bit. Superb. So finished 45-14 to the Texans in that one. Let's head now to Tampa for the Buccaneers 32, Eagles 9. we talk about in the Gridiron Crew about having grit and having players that we kind of, well, teams that we have a soft spot for. The Lions certainly are one, the Texans certainly one, but when it comes to players, I think above all, players that have been cast off rejects, and I think this is the little orphan puppy that has come to the back door of the Crew more often than not, that's been fed scraps for the past couple of seasons, and we're just so happy to see it getting a happy home, to be well fed and looked after, and it's thriving now, and that is Baker Mayfield's Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the humbling of the Philadelphia Eagles. Matt, Baker Mayfield, what a transformation this man is it's made. Last year, he couldn't get a team. He was turning up here, there, and everywhere. Had a couple of games for the LA Rams when Stafford was injured, and led them to a game-winning drive in the last minutes. Headbutting, he was so hyped up, they headbutted somebody without his helmet on. He was just, wee things like that, it makes him just so endearing to us at the Crew. What do you guys, the Roar of the Lions, think of him?
I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because everyone thought he was hard as nails when he was with the Browns, but there was always this aura of him being a little bit childish, that he hadn't grown up yet, and that's why they didn't want to pay him. And he's bounced around the league, he's been humbled, and he's still the quarterback that played with the Browns, and he's still got that arm, and he can still fight through everything. I mean, he was battered and bruised. He was so broken with the Browns, and he still wanted to play through everything. Yeah. It reminded me of Stafford. He still reminds me of Stafford. He's an absolute warrior, and I think he's fantastic. I do have a gripe with him that if he'd won his game against, was it Seattle last year? It was what put Seattle into the playoffs was LA losing. And it was him at quarterback. Yes. So, like, come on, Baker, you can win this game and you can put the Lions in the playoffs over Seattle, and he didn't do it. But I love the story. He was a scout team defensive end for the Carolina Panthers last year at some point in the season. And he's now in the divisional round of the playoffs as QB1, and he deserves it.
Absolutely. Liam, the Buccaneers were written off by majority of people when it came to the start of the season. Tom Brady retiring, everybody thought that was them. They were on their downward spiral. But the thing that kept them going, and it seems to have rejuvenated them, apart from Baker, of course, coming in, which is the X factor everybody knows, is that they've got talent, they've got quality players, they've got some fantastic, consistent wide receivers in Mike Evans, Godwin. But they've also had a really, really strong defense. Were we so wrong to write them off so early on?
Well, I kind of touching on that, I think, with Baker. I think it's probably one of his best supporting casts, wide receiver-wise. He's, as you say, with Evans. And so Godwin's probably had a bit of a down year overall, but he still had a good game this week, also getting the touchdown. I suppose we probably were a bit close, a bit quick to rule him out, I suppose. And Evans had another 1,000-yard season again, sort of thing. And is in a contract. I think he's due to get another contract extension if he's going to get one. I think for next year. I think so. I think overall, and I suppose another player would be White. I suppose Rashard White, the running back. He's had his. I suppose a lot of people doubted him as well. I think, but he's been getting the yards we needed it, getting the touchdowns we needed it, sort of thing. And he's been and doing a job for them. He's been, obviously let go of playoff Lenny sort of thing. So and he's just kind of stepped in there and taken over really.
They have not been pretty studs. They've won some absolutely horrendous games. I remember the last game of the season. I think it was against the Panthers. 3 PATs was enough to beat them on that day. They have won. They've not won pretty. They've been gritty, as we've mentioned several times tonight. One wee thing that I want to point out to you, and as I mentioned earlier on about the thread about the tight ends from the teams, Laporta, Musgrave, Ferguson, and Njoku, Schultz at the Texans as well. Kay Doughton had a fantastic game last night. He got 89 yards from 8 receptions and was a big reason for the Bucks getting down the field and getting plenty of first downs, and was a massive target for him yesterday. Is it enough, do you think, for them to actually push on after this game? Is it having players like Mike Evans, who we all big fans of at the Crew, but having like these reliable players that you can trust, that you can go to time after time with Godwin and Kay Doughton in this occasion? Do you think that's made a big difference in how well this team has done?
I think the fact Baker trusts his receivers, and I mean, there's absolutely no reason why not to. You mentioned the names here. The first two are Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Kay Doughton's been a big part of Baker's safety blanket, whatever you want to call it, this season. He's used them at times when he's had to. So, as I say, he's got the trust in those receivers, and obviously Matt will be watching these guys a lot closer than we will at the weekend, because that the first two names, Evans and Godwin, they're on any team in the league, they're an elite weapon on their own.
Yes.
The fact that the Lions have got to game plan for the two of those guys, and Matt's obviously spoke about the difference from Branch to the other corners, is that something the Bucks are going to be looking at this week for this game in particular, to say, well, if Branch goes with Godwin, Evans is going to be our first read, or vice versa. So I think it is something that the Lions will have to consider quite strongly going into this week. What I think is really curious is, obviously you mentioned that Panthers game in week 18. The Bucks were literally an Antoine Winfield Jr. tipped pass away from losing a touchdown to the Panthers and putting them in a losing position. That's how close they were to being out of the playoffs. And then they've obviously the Eagles have stepped into their stadium, and let's not kid ourselves, they dominated the Eagles. The Eagles get 9 points in this game, and they all came in the second quarter. They stopped the brotherly shove, the tush push, whatever you want to call it, in the second quarter. The Bucks defense, I'd mentioned it on the preview crew as well. The Bucks defense feels like it's getting back to that Super Bowl defense. Again, I've seen it firsthand when they absolutely destroyed us, albeit with a secondary offensive line, but they still won. But they're getting back to that stage. They're being that nasty, difficult team to kind of beat. And when you've got somebody, again, I think that was a higher amount of praise that Matt gave him, comparing him to Stafford as his first point, and the fact that he does remind them of Stafford in various aspects he want to get out. When they've got somebody in there like him that can find these targets reliably and consistently, they're going to be a threat to any team.
Absolutely. Matt, did you lump heavily on the Buccaneers when you saw that AJ Brown was going to be out of the game with injury?
Well, and Hurts obviously had his hand injury as well. I put £50 on Tampa to win by 11 points or more.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that returns 350 quid. So I was pretty happy with the blowout win. It was lovely. I was saying that none of that mattered to me. Matt Patricia calling the defense was what won it for me. I just knew that they would be soft as hell. And they were. They were awful. But so we've played Tampa already this season. Week 6, we beat them 20-6. And it's a totally different team. They just went to pieces in the pass, couldn't run the ball. And their defense, it's a weird one, because when they got you. But they don't quite often. It's a high risk, high blitz, all action defense. And if you have an accurate quarterback who can just surgically take a 2-step drop and pass the ball over it, you're okay. And so I don't have a huge amount of fear about Tampa Bay. I'm not overlooking them, because if they start hitting you and the quarterback starts seeing ghosts, you're in big, big trouble. But, they've just drafted so well. I mean, Cansey had a hell of a game in this game, the rookie defensive tackle. But they took Cody Mulch, the guard, who's had a reasonable year on the offensive line. And then they also had couple of offensive weapons that I really, really liked in the later rounds. Payne Durham out of Purdue, the tight end. He only had one catch, but he was one of my favorite tight ends in the draft this year. He's going to come good in a couple of years, but he could be a factor. Odd catch here or there with K-Dot on as tight end one. The other one was Trey Palmer, who had the 56-yarder, and he was absolutely brilliant. Only one catch, but that's all we need. And, when
the average.
Yeah, great average. Not quite as good as the tight end for the Texans, who had a 76-yard average on his one catch. But it's a highlight of all of these teams that are kind of going through, that you're looking through and they're like, oh, they have 6 or 7 viable guys they can pass to. In Otton, David Moore, we haven't mentioned, who had a really good game too. I think he was formerly with the Panthers, so moved in division and is doing good stuff. Trey Palmer, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Payne Durham. And then I think Chase Edmonds is a good change of pace back as well. He hasn't hit the heights that he has previously in his career. But if Rachaad White goes down, he's passable. So this team has a little bit of depth. I don't say I don't have fear of them, but they've definitely got enough to make some waves.
What about the Eagles? Where did it all go wrong for them? Is it Matt Patricia? Is that where the blame lies, or is it Sirianni? And it's weird to say this after when you were looking at week 11, that how great a run they'd been and how they were just doing enough to get through. But is he in the hot seat now? Is there a chance that they could be looking to move on from him?
I think, as we touched on earlier, I think the Eagles fans will let them know all about it. So I suppose time will tell. But it was a strange coming into this game like before it. The Eagles, as we touched on, were just falling apart at the end of the season, and you like, can they regroup and do something in the playoffs? But I just couldn't see it happening. I think I picked the Bucks to win it as well, which again, Bucks have been battling through all season themselves, but it was a strange place to be where we are now with the Eagles, where they've come, where they've came from, where they've got to now. I've also touched a lot on Matt Patricia in the defense, but there just seems to be more to it than that. I don't know what's going on. I suppose there was all the thing with AJ Brown removing all his stuff off of his social media and things like that, and all that. I know that I don't really buy too much into that. Players do it all the time, and a bit of showboating, if you want to call it that. But who knows what's really behind that? Is he just in a huff because they wouldn't let him go, etc.? But who knows? But yeah, there just seems to be more drama there somewhere. Time will tell if we ever find out.
Amazing. Well, it finished with the Buccaneers and the Eagles. It finished, I've lost it there, 32-9 to the Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers, as we say, progressed through. They're now actually going to take on Matt's Detroit Lions, heading to Ford Field on Sunday, 8 o'clock. We're looking forward to that matchup. It'll be a fun and frisky game, no doubt. That one there. Right, guys, I've kept you long enough. Let's. I was thinking of postponing the next game, the Steelers at the Bills, but I think we'll persevere. We'll get through this super fast. This one was a long time coming, and how they managed to get that game on in those conditions is just testament to the ground staff that work there, to the fans, and the absolute mentalness of the people that actually braved going out to clear the paths around the stadium, the seats at the stadium, and to get that on. It was wild. Wild. I've got some friends who live in Long Island and Ohio and places over there, and they've been bracing for some wild weather, and that Highfield Stadium, how they managed to get a game on there when you saw what was about 2-3 foot of snow in that stadium. Incredible. Did you catch much of the game, Studs? Did you see much of it yourself?
I seen bits of it, to be honest. So it was, for me, I'd been kind of quite vocal. I didn't want to see Mason Rudolph in the playoffs because I don't think he could do anything. He's not going to lead a team and drive a team. And then you've seen, obviously, TJ Watt getting injured last week of the season. This game was always going to be a washout. And I think it could have proved the Steelers really didn't lay much of a glove on Josh Allen. Josh Allen's biggest thing all season's been turnovers. He turns the ball over there was absolutely no turnovers unless it was Mason Rudolph. I think he committed a couple. So for me, it was I think this
Just
was
the one.
Just the one.
Just the one for Mason Rudolph, as you said, none for Josh Allen.
This was literally the look at all the games this weekend. This was the one where I would confidently have said this is a Bills win. End of discussion, and let's move on to the next one. So, I just as soon as TJ Watt's out that equation, I don't think the Steelers had enough.
If I had £50 off Matt's money, I think I'd have been putting it on the Bills, and I certainly wouldn't have been putting on the Bucks at the weekend there. But Matt, 14 to 0 in the first quarter, and then it was tied the rest of the game. Both teams scoring 7 in the second, 3 in the third, and 7 in the fourth. After the Bills had got their lead, they just kept them at arm's length. Like I keep my wee guy away from them as they kept swinging. They just did enough really to keep them back. That they didn't really have to extend themselves too much. And as Studs had mentioned, because you're playing up against Mason Rudolph, there's no TJ Watt. I think the Bills kind of realise if they can just get that little bit of a head start, get a good wee lead, then they can really just conserve themselves, protect themselves for later on in the playoff rounds.
Yeah, I think just to preface this, I think Josh Allen's my favourite player in the league and has been for some time. He is fantastic, and I think the Pittsburgh Steelers should be ashamed of themselves for this game because allowing the 52-yard rushing touchdown through just weak tackling, like they just didn't look bothered. And then they came back into it, and it's like, oh, there is some fight there. But it was really disappointing to watch. So on that side of things, the Pittsburgh defense just missed TJ Watt. They missed their leader. And without him, the culture kind of fell apart. Everyone seemed to have a bad game on the Pittsburgh defense, and Allen really took advantage of that. I think it was the first time 2 tight ends had scored touchdowns in a playoff game or something, which I thought was a mad stat, so it might be wrong. But Kincaid and Dawson Knox had their touchdowns, really lovely passes by Allen. But I'm going to disagree on Mason Rudolph, and he's someone I've come around to a lot this season in very much a similar way to the Browns quarterback that we were talking about earlier. But I think he's played his way into having a camp battle next year if Tomlin stays in charge of the Steelers. And of course, there's rumors as to whether he wants to walk away from that situation or whether they're going to make him walk away from the situation. But he wasn't the reason they lost this game either. Quarterbacks being let down by the rest of their team is the theme of this round for me because, yeah, he had one pick, but it wasn't his fault that Pickens had a fumble that was recovered by Buffalo. And otherwise, they moved the ball really well. The pick was in the end zone, and he targeted Kaiir Elam, who had back-to-back awful plays. So it was probably a pretty good shout to go after him. And Elam just made a kind of lucky play. He wasn't even looking at the ball. It just kind of hit him in the hand, and he just kind of grabbed onto it. But I think Rudolph was impressive. And I think he's been impressive all this time because they've had their backup quarterback healthy the last 4 or 5 weeks. And yet Rudolph is playing over Mitch Trubisky. And that's for a reason. It's because they give him a better chance to win.
I think they're happy to move on to Trubisky. Rudolph, as you say, 22 from 39, 229 yards with the 2 touchdowns and just the 1 interception. Yeah, certainly played himself into contention for the start of next season. You mentioned the Josh Allen touchdown, the Russian touchdown. It was the slight pause that he made halfway through the run that just created utter confusion for the Steelers. And I thought that was absolutely hilarious. I thought there had been a call, there was a whistle or something when I first watched it, and he was just stopping, giving himself up. But then just the injection of pace, and even towards the end, he was still running away from players who should be able to keep up with him. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Liam, what did you think of it? Did you catch much of the game?
Yes, I saw it like certainly before for the first half. I think, as you say, Allen was impressive. That run was something else, and even as the 2 throws he had to the tight ends, also really nice plays. You can expect him to do, but you just kind of he just again kept his game clean for this week. Didn't throw any interceptions, and I suppose that was just kind of the kind of difference really in the end. As we touched on, Rudolph did all right. He was let down, I think, by Pickens losing that fumble. There's that other one, the Frymouth one, that was debatable whether he lost as well. I thought he did. I thought the Buffalo player caught it in bounds, or recovered it in bounds, should I say? But I think for the Bills, I thought the one thing I kind of read was kind of seen there was they lost some more of their defense to injuries again. I think it was Bernard that went out, and some other players went out. That seems to be just troubling them all season. They just can't seem to stay healthy on defense. So I don't know if that's going to be one of the deciding factors. What happens in the end in the next round or two, however they go, and I think I suppose that we'll see if they can get some players back healthy again, and hopefully be able to kind of keep their momentum going. I suppose that they've kind of built up after we so much wrote them off, didn't we, a few times? So
absolutely, it's certainly the momentum, as you say, that the Buffalo Bills Super Bowl window stays open still, and this week they are hosting the Kansas City Chiefs, who we're actually going to now, Studs, played the Dolphins at the weekend. Record-breaking temperatures. I think it got to minus 20, minus 21 degrees Celsius, with another minus 30, 32 for the wind chill when you factored that in. It was a ridiculous idea to play football in those conditions. Yet, your boys came through, and would you have said that it was a convincing one for you? Yeah, he's muted. Absolutely.
Absolutely. For me, it was. The boys come through. You said it yourself, but there was only one team really played football. I do not think the Miami Dolphins turned up at all. Tyreek Hill had one play where we lost track of him. There was a nice motion, and it was already probably beating the cornerback for pace before he even got by the line of scrimmage, if I'm honest. He's just so quick. But other than that, we controlled this game from start to finish. The one concern I would have on our side of the ball was we weren't clinical enough in the red zone. I think between the second and third quarter, all our points were field goals. We got a touchdown in the first quarter, touchdown in the last quarter. We had multiple red zone visits in the second and third quarter, and we just did not put the Dolphins away. But again, our defence, I mentioned it earlier, again on the preview crew, our defence has been ridiculous all season. It really has been the driving force behind this team. L'Jarius Sneed, again, there's one route on Tyreek Hill for me, which again, there's been multiple videos shown of it, and I think even Tyreek Hill's kind of laughed about it. Basically, where Sneed gets his hands on him at the line of scrimmage, I think it might be a run place. It ends up not coming to Hill, but Hill falls over, and then after the play stopped dead, you actually see Hill getting up and shoving Sneed. So he's obviously raging at him, and I think Sneed just seen the two games against the Dolphins. He seems to have had his number. He knows how to kind of work Hill. But yeah, for me, it was convincing victory. Slight concerns over the red zone visits, but yeah, I don't think we looked in any danger.
Matt, the Dolphins were pretty banged up. In the lead up to the game, they were picking up a few players to help bolster the lines there. For me, one of the biggest disappointments, though, and it might have been due to injury, was Raheem Mostert, who's had a fantastic season, record-breaking number of touchdowns. Just didn't really get on it at all. 8 carries for 33 yards, and that was the most of any of the Dolphins for rushing. I'm really, really disappointed for him and the team that they didn't manage to get more.
Yeah, I think it's the thing which has kind of pushed Miami to this sort of elite offense level is the fact that they already had the elite passing attack with Tyreek and Waddle, but then they added this dynamic rushing attack, which they just, for love nor money, they would not run the ball last year. And everyone was crying out for it because they looked like they were going to be good doing it. They finally went to it and it worked. And it's like, wow, now you're multi-dimensional. Now you can beat anyone. And most has been a big part of that. But Achan's been huge as well. And neither of them came to play. But that wasn't their fault. Their offensive line was just absolutely decimated by the Chiefs. And I mean, I know that they only had 2 sacks on the day, the Chiefs, but they were putting Tua under massive pressure when he was dropping back to pass. And when they were running the ball, they couldn't go anywhere. So what do you do as an offense? Miami are a team built for warm weather. Losing in week 18 to lose home field advantage has put the nail in the coffin of their season. And it's all their own fault.
It certainly did. It's a shame, although I've enjoyed watching the Dolphins, especially at the start of the season. I like Mike McDaniel. I still think that there's more to come from us. I still feel they're a team on the ascendancy, and I think they will learn from this. But as you said, injuries at the wrong time, players just not quite performing to their ability. The conditions as well, we've got to take that into consideration. Minus 20 degrees. I love seeing the videos of Travis Kelce coming off to the sideline. It looked as if he'd just been through, see, like the stuntmen have been lit on fire, and then the steam is just still emanating off of them. It was ridiculous. It looked as if he was about to spontaneously combust at any moment. It was terrific. I still think there's more to come from the Dolphins. Studs, going back to your Chiefs, we mentioned Mostert not making the most of his opportunities or even getting many opportunities, but someone who did was Isaiah Pacheco. Got a touchdown in the Super Bowl last year. I know you're a fan of his. Moved away from Clyde Edwards-Helaire to really replace him. Isaiah Pacheco, just an angry runner, and he's making the most of his chances now.
No, he's absolutely somebody who's took his chance. He was a seventh rounder, I think, last year when we picked him up. And Edwards-Helaire had multiple opportunities. He picked up an injury, and Pacheco hasn't looked back. He took his chances last year. He's been probably one of the shining lights. We've had 2 shining lights on our offense, and it's been Pacheco and Rashee Rice, and they're the 2 guys that really stepped up this weekend. Both of them getting a touchdown. Rashee Rice, 140 yards, I think it was, or something to that effect. 130.
130.
130 yards on 8 receptions. He was ridiculous. And Pacheco, there's some of his, particularly his early runs, where he was dragging. He really wanted to feel the hits in the cold, and he was hitting that Miami defense to see if they were going to stand up to it. And they just kept going back and back for more. So, no, those 2 guys were absolutely superb for us this weekend. And again, there's one play from Mahomes. I think it was a 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12, where we've seen a little bit of Mahomes' magic. It dropped back to pass, it opened up, and we just seen him scramble for the first down. I think he almost got in the end zone with it, and it might have been in that play that his helmet actually shattered because of the cold as well. So you're just starting to see little glimpses of what Mahomes can do. And again, similar to what I said about who was I talking about, the quarterback, CJ Stroud, where he's grown in and he's hitting the form. Mahomes knows how to win big playoff games, and if he's starting to find these wee bits of magic and starting to really find form with these receivers, then other teams could be in trouble. And the one thing I've actually loved about the playoffs this weekend is nobody's been talking about the Chiefs at all. We've just kind of slid under the radar this weekend, maybe because of the weather, I don't know, but I don't think there's much noise around the Chiefs so far.
That may change, and this is the time of year where you're wanting them to really just start to come onto the form. They've been holding back all year, playing within themselves, plenty of drops as well, Liam. From the look of the game, the Dolphins and the Chiefs, as we mentioned there, and Studs just brought him up there, Rashee Rice coming onto a game at the right time towards the end of the season. He was starting to really raise his head and prove that he's the number 1 wide receiving target for Pat Mahomes, the one who's not going to drop the ball, it seems, just now. 130 yards from the 8 receptions and the touchdown as well. He seems to be Mr. Consistency in that team when they've really been crying out for it.
No, definitely. I think obviously he's just kind of slowly built as the season's gone on. Also, he had his flashes at the start from memory as well. The first couple of games he had some flashes, but he's just kind of built up. And even the last Dolphins game, I think he got a touchdown as well. Had another strong game in the last the one in Germany. And like that, they've maybe just found a receiver now. I know Tony was inactive, kind of. I don't know if he was. I think he was on the injury report. I think if memory serves him well. Obviously Tony's had his. We all know about Tony's moments throughout the season with his drops, but. And then I suppose coming into the season, everyone was talking about Sky Moore kind of making a step forward. He seems to have kind of disappeared as well. Harvin's now back in there, coming back from the Jets, and obviously he's not maybe getting the stats, but he's in there doing his piece sort of thing, doing the dirty work to some degree. And Rice seems to just be just slowly working his way into Mahomes. A nice Mahomes Rice tandem.
Absolutely. The only other thing that I want to bring up from that game was Kyle Juszczyk's wife. Did you see the jacket that she made for Taylor Swift? There was also one that she made for, I think it's Taylor Lautner, for the Lions.
Detroit game.
Have you seen that one, Matt? It's someone at the NFL shop needs to get in touch with Kristen Juszczyk, because the work that she's doing, these are going to really take off, and they look fur-lined as well, which at this time of year everybody's going to really appreciate that. Absolutely terrific work. Fantastic, guys. This has been a marathon. It's been an absolute slog. I've been getting the door chapped on me saying it's bedtime, so I think we will bypass our cruise missile and who crushed it this week. Just like the Bills game, we'll postpone that on. Gentlemen, all that leaves me to say is thank you very, very much for joining us. Liam, it's been an absolute pleasure.
No, always a pleasure. Always great to chat ball.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope your team does well this weekend again. They're, of course, my green team, as I said. I'll be rooting for them and hope they pull off another wee victory at the weekend. Studs, you took the call late on this evening, and I really, really appreciate you. Yes, late substitution to come in. I appreciate you helping us out, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure as always.
No hassles, man. Always happy to dive in and help where I can, and any excuse to chat on a Chiefs victory, I'll gladly accept.
And Matt, wonderful chatting with you. Your knowledge of the Lions and the game on a whole is to be commended. It's something that I aspire myself to get to, knowing I'm still at the top layer, the veneer at the top with just the offensive players, but you know your stuff, and hopefully we can get you back on again sometime. It'd be wonderful to talk to you. Never know, maybe another Lions win this weekend and we'll get you back next week.
Definitely. Sounds great to me. Thanks for having me on.
So, Matt, where can we hear more from you and your fellow Lions fans?
We're on all the social media. We even have someone cutting up TikToks now. So if you just search Roar of the Lions UK on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, then you'll find us somewhere. There's a website as well, which you mentioned, Keith, earlier, but it's not often used anymore. We started as a blog and we kind of transitioned away from that quickly because speaking about it's more fun than writing about it somehow.
Certainly is. Do you know something I've noticed you mentioned earlier on off camera talking about AI? We can get AI to scribe all this rubbish that we spew for the couple of hours that we're on the podcast for. So yeah, we might be able to cherry pick some little nuggets from that and put onto websites and blogs as going forward. But thank you very much again. Really, really appreciate it. As I said, we have bypassed the cruise missile of the week and who crushed it for you. If you have any suggestions and nominations, please get in touch with the crew. As Matt says, we're across all the social media as well. At Grid Irn-Cru on X, and you can find us on Instagram, Twitch, everywhere. So yes, please get your nominations in. We will be back later on this week. This Thursday, Dan will be at the helm as the preview crew look ahead to the divisional round of matches. So there's 4 matches, isn't it, this weekend? 2 on the Saturday, 2 on the Sunday. So another feast of football for us to look forward to. Thanks very much for listening, and we will speak to you again soon.